President Trump has threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act in Minnesota in response to violent protests against ICE agents in Minneapolis. To dive in, we welcome on our panel Democratic strategist Madeline Summerville and Republican strategist John Jordan. Thank you guys for coming back on. President Trump saying he may invoke the Insurrection Act to deploy troops to Minnesota to suppress domestic violence. Trump said that these were professional agitators and insurrectionists acting and attacking law enforcement. Madeline, do you think that the president has grounds for doing so, and have things gotten so out of hand that Trump should send troops?
I think that this idea of sending in troops is so backwards under the Insurrection Act. So the point of the Insurrection Act and the way that it's been used in the past is when the people take up arms against the government, right? And what's happened here actually is that the people are protesting and they're being deemed as unlawfully present there. And to me, it seems like the president is encouraging this. And there's no arms that are being taken up against these ICE agents, first of all. And what would happen if you would send in troops here is that it would just exaggerate it even more. It would make the violence even worse. So it's completely backwards for him to want to do that. What's really happening here is ICE's presence is provoking all of these problems. In fact, they've had two separate sources now that have confirmed that 73.6% of the people who are currently in ICE custody have no criminal record whatsoever. And so the people are out there protesting for a reason. They're by and large doing it peacefully. And the fact that the president wants to claim that the people are taking up arms in a way that requires the federal government to step in when it's actually the federal government that they're fighting against makes no sense.
John, what's your take on this? Can the president invoke the Insurrection Act at this point?
Well, first of all, the 1807 Insurrection Act has been invoked in modern times, and it doesn't require the specific take up arms against the federal government. It was invoked, by the way, in the South in furtherance of civil rights in the 60s. In 1990, in the Los Angeles riots by Republican and Democrat presidents alike. Now,
Indeed,
I have to
that was
agree
required
with,
because they refused to follow the law.
I agree with you. I don't think he should do it either, and I don't think he has to, because the politics of this inside Minnesota is souring. You saw Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey today call for peace, call for protesters to go home. This is aging like gas station sushi to watch all of these middle-aged, older white Karens get in the way of federal law enforcement, obstruct streets, and all of that. So President Trump should just let this go, let this ride, and let the left stew in their own juices. And first of all, and lastly, everybody that has come across the border illegally has committed a federal misdemeanor. You do not have a right to be in here. The left wants to conflate legal immigrants who obeyed the law, came in lawfully and legally and complied with the process, and they want to lump them with all of the illegal aliens that have been let in. There are a difference. We're all for legal immigration, but illegal immigrants, no, they do not have a right to be here.
I'd like to respond to that if I could.
This. Go ahead, yeah.
Thank you. So when it comes to legal versus illegal immigrants, and whether it's not a criminal offense at all, it's actually a civil offense to come into the country illegally. The claim, and I'm not even just saying that Kristi Noem has said that they're going after only the worst of the worst, right? She has said recently in all of her interviews that they are getting fraudsters, people who have committed terrible, evil, awful, violent crimes against children, violent people. She is constantly reinforcing that. Why would she be constantly reinforcing that when 75% of the people who they're arresting have no criminal record whatsoever? And for sure, even if you want to claim that being here illegally is a crime, then it's not a violent one. And it's because they want it to be easier for people to say that they can leave the United States and they can deport them without due process and they can ignore their human rights.
So first of all, under 8 United States Code, it is a crime to come inside the United States legally. The left, you just illustrate the problem perfectly, that you think that illegal immigrants have a right to be here and that they have a right to due process for being deported. They do not.
They absolutely do.
Deportation is an administrative action. You want to defend illegal immigrants being in this country. That's the issue, right? It's fraud in Minnesota and illegal immigration. Let us clean this up. The laws that ICE is enforcing right now were signed by President Clinton and enforced by President Obama, by the way, and other Democrat presidents.
It would be great if that was what Trump is doing.
President Trump is not making law here. This is enforcing existing laws on the books. And you want to
he's removing TPS protections.
Illegal ones.
He's removing protections from immigrants and then deporting them, saying that now they're here illegally. He's arresting people
Illegal
at their court hearings who are following the
illegally
law.
Need to be deported and should be deported pursuant to the law, as per President Clinton.
At the White House today, we had Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt saying that the protests are taking place in states where the governors oppose President Trump. They're telling local law enforcement not to cooperate with federal authorities. Let's take a look at that.
And they are holding their state and local law enforcement hostage as a result. And these Democrat mayors and governors are doing this over what? Over the lawful and legitimate law enforcement operations to remove violent criminals.
Madeline, what do you make of the pushback from Democrat governors? Is this tainted by politics?
Well, I just want to address what she said exactly. Violent criminals. That is the narrative that you're hearing. That is what they want you to believe about all the people who are in the United States illegally, which, by the way, undocumented and illegal are different things. There are about 1 million illegal immigrants that are here, and the rest are undocumented that they're referring to. Right, which means that they're in the process of getting their citizenship. So just to clarify that. And by the way, again, just so you know the statistics, 73.6% confirmed by two separate sources, Cato Institute and Trace, have looked at ICE data to show that they have no criminal record. And if you want to count being here illegally, that's fine, but they're certainly not violent. So that's my problem with it, right? Now, when it comes to the Democratic governor's Democratic leadership, I haven't heard a single Democrat governor or a single person in Democrat leadership call for violence against ICE. What they're calling for is for people to exercise their legal ability to be observers, to stand there legally and hold their phones up and watch. The problem is that ICE officers are snatching phones out of people's hands and pulling people who are legal observers out of their cars and dragging them to the ground. That's what's actually happening. Okay. That's why the Democratic governors are saying we're behind you, but no one has advocated for violence, and there's no evidence of that whatsoever.
Facts won't go away here. So the problem is this, that Democrat governors will not help ICE deport even the violent criminals that those states have in custody on other charges. Let's say Minnesota has somebody in custody on burglary and they're an illegal alien. They will release them rather than turn them over to ICE. These blue states are protecting the violent ones. They are actually trying to protect them from being deported. That's a problem by your own by the standards of your own argument there. That's what they're doing, and that's wrong.
No, I agree with you.
I want to get into now our next.
Melinda, we probably work this out.
Yeah.
Well, our next topic here on this panel, I want to get into is President Trump today releasing a new healthcare framework. Here's Secretary Leavitt on this plan.
If this plan is put in place, every single American who has health care in the United States will see lower costs as a result. They will see more transparency.
Okay, so this healthcare plan calls on Congress to codify Trump's efforts to reduce prescription drug prices, direct more money into health savings accounts rather than insurance companies, and enforce price transparency across insurers, hospitals, physicians. John, do you see this as a win for everyday Americans?
Yeah, I do. And I think I might even get Melinda over to agree with this. Ever since the Great Society, Medicare, Medi-Cal, and all the state programs, and then the ACA, the so-called Obamacare, all of these programs was designed to figure out how to pay for healthcare. While healthcare costs skyrocketed, 1/7 of the economy right now, it's unsustainable. Nobody has actually gone into this and actually said, how do we bring healthcare costs down before we worry about who's going to pay for it? In every other, goods and services market in this country, people are consumers. They know how much something is going to cost to decide if it's going to be worth it. There is competition and price transparency. That's how markets work. In healthcare, insurance companies just pay for it. People have no idea what it costs. There's no competition. There's weird, non-transparent pricing. There's insurance companies getting rich. There's lawyers getting rich on this. So when in fact, why don't we put the power of the American people like we do with every other good and service and let consumer and market forces bring aggregate healthcare costs down. And then I think dealing with the who pays for it is going to be a lot easier.
Madeline, your take on this plan, and also what's the Democrats' broader strategy on health care moving forward?
Yeah, it would be great if the Democrats would, be honest and truthful about wanting to work with the other side, because it is not sustainable what we have now. The problem is that the healthcare plan that Trump is proposing currently also is not sustainable, and he's lying to the American people about how it's going to work. First of all, I'll tell you the true things that I agree with, right? Prescription drug prices coming down, I'm not going to complain about. Insurance companies publishing their information about how much money they're making, that's great. But the fact is that the money that President Trump is saying he's going to put into your bank account actually cannot be used for premiums. And that is what the healthcare subsidies from Obamacare that we're fighting about right now that actually caused the government to shut down, that's what those would have gone to. So the whole point is that Americans can't afford to pay their premiums. And this money that President Trump is going to put in your pocket, this one-time payment, cannot be used by law to pay for premiums. So it's a scam. He's scamming us because he's able to use words like, we're empowering you, you make your own decision, you do this yourself. Well, guess what? Not only are you not able to use it to pay for premiums, it also is deregulating the industry. And any industry that involves deregulation, especially when it comes to pharmaceuticals, because he's saying that he's trying to make alternatives to certain pharmaceuticals more available. When you deregulate an industry that involves safety or health, all that does is help the corporations and hurt the people. The people he's trying to help are like the guy who's now the head of the CDC, who is a biotech investor, or Vivek Ramaswamy. Those are the people who benefit from Trump's new healthcare plan.
John, final word?
No, not really. Allowing people to have purchasing power over out-of-pocket costs is a huge benefit. And under his plan, you would be able to contribute some there would be contributions for premiums. The idea is to take power away from insurance companies and take power away from government and give it to consumers and market actors so we can rationalize healthcare costs. And as for deregulation, right now regulation inhibits innovation. The regulatory scheme is completely bloated and out of control. Got to look into the details of this. We have an over-regulated healthcare industry that's over-subsidized with too much government involvement, with no cost discipline, market forces causing costs to come down. And that's the idea. Lawyers with malpractice and claims being able to make tens of millions of dollars, jacking up insurance premiums. The same with big pharma. President Trump has put the boot on big pharma in terms of their differential pricing and making sure that the American consumer and the American government paid the highest prices in the world under President Trump, bringing those costs down and bringing market accountability to insurance companies and governments alike.
You know who pushes that narrative? Right, well, corporations that don't want to have to pay to test their product before they give it to the American people.
Okay.
Well, with that, Madeline Summerville and John Jordan, thank you both very much for sharing your insights with us as always. Really appreciate it.